in honour of Mental Health Week, we should not be afraid to share our stories and shine a light on the stigma that is still there around mental health. So I told you a bit about my story in the other video. And then after my spiritual awakening, I would say, the voice in my head was a huge experience. It really woke me up to a degree, and I was determined to change my life and do something about how I was feeling. Bearing in mind I'd never talked to anybody, not even my own family, about how I felt. I suddenly woke up to the fact that I needed to get help, and I needed to change my life and change my environment and change my surroundings. And my depression was exasperated. Like, it was very much my thinking, but it was exasperated because of the environment I was in. So the play hard, work hard, play hard environment around drugs and alcohol took its toll. And I was very aware that I needed to change how I lived my life. So slowly but surely, I started to go to personal development seminars. So if you're listening to this and you are suffering with depression, I really recommend you trying to find a positive environment, an environment of people who are going the direction that you want to go. And obviously I'm going to recommend our Kitty Talks and our Do Your Dharma community, because I've helped many people actually through their depression journeys, because I really didn't understand why I had depression, and the personal development that I did really helped me understand why it manifested and came into my life, and why I was feeling so disconnected. And I started to discover that the way I viewed the world, I was always looking at it in a negative light. So I had picked up from my sort of family background, I had a dad who was very black and white. So these things were right and these things were wrong. So hence, if you watch my other video about me having a relationship with a man who was engaged to be married, my God, that was so wrong, and I hated myself. And don't get me wrong, it's not something I would do now, but I have a bit more of a kind of, it takes two to tango attitude, rather than you're the devil. And of course, I trapped myself via my thinking. And this is something that people do when they are suffering with very bad depression, is that their beliefs are their reality. And so that negative thinking of the beliefs can trap them. So I started to understand and see that how I viewed the world, I was always looking at the negative. I was always looking at what I had done wrong. I was always criticizing myself. I was always in blame, shame, or guilt. Now, emotions have vibrations. You think about when you're happy, you feel light, you feel good. Emotions have vibrations. So when we are depressed, we literally feel lower, stuck. They call it the black hole. So it's very important how we think. So I started to turn my thinking around. I started to focus on what was going well in my life. I started to develop a gratitude practice. And slowly but surely, I also did a lot of healing work. Like, one of the things that we're going to talk about in the Pain to Purpose series is the things that you can do constructively to help you shift your thinking, to shift your vibration, to shift your frequency. Everything is energy, and we are a frequency. And my frequency was very low, it was very disconnected. And of course, the drug and alcohol on top of that made it even more so. So slowly but surely, what I started to do was shift my frequency. And how did I do that? Well, I started to also look at my past trauma. I was carrying around a lot of negativity and a lot of negative thinking around things that had happened to me. And I actually hadn't dealt with them. I'd had a situation when I was in my 20s where my school friends, who we'd all been school friends for a long, long time, I got ostracized by that group of friends. And, now I can understand that I was not a very easy person to be around, with my highs and lows and my binge drinking. And I kind of understand why I was ostracized. But at the time, I didn't understand that, and I took it very, very badly. And I hated myself again, and I was trapped in this cycle of negative thinking, negative beliefs. And I never processed the pain that I had and that I went through with those friendships breaking down. And actually, when I went to see a counsellor, that was one of the things I looked at with a counsellor, and we went into what trauma I had. And I remember talking to this counsellor, talking to them about the situation, and I remember bursting something, because we literally hit on the spot of the unresolved emotion that was held in my body. And I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I just couldn't believe it, because obviously that unresolved pain that I had not dealt with, because don't forget, I didn't cry, I didn't deal with it at the time, I pushed it away and I pretended it wasn't there and I went drinking. So when we don't deal with past trauma that we've got in our systems, it's stored into our body, and consequently it literally weighs us down. So I do remember crying profusely, but I felt so much better afterwards because I started to process and deal with that past trauma. So it really was a healing journey. You know, I did a lot of things. I shifted my friendship circle so it was a more positive environment. And we're going to go on to, in the Pain to Purpose series, where, you know, the next video that I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a process of what you can do to help cure your depression. Because it's really important that we take responsibility, but also take our power back. Like when we're feeling disconnected and stuck and depressed, you know, we feel very worthless. We feel very powerless, actually. And we're going to start to take that power back. So stay with me, stay tuned in the Power to Purpose series, and come and say hello, PM me if you are going through something, because there's definitely stuff we can do to help you. So back to my story. As I said, slowly but